Brothers, tudo bem? Hoje no The Sound of Broadway nós temos mais um convidado internacional super especial. Gente, eu tô tremendo por dentro, porque nós estamos aqui com o Munkustrap original do musical Cats. Nós estamos aqui com Michael Gruber. Hi, Mr. Gruber, how are you?
I'm great, Matthias. How are you today?
I'm fine too. Thank you so much to be here. We are so honored to have you here with us and to talk with our students about musical theater and about your career. So thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
Mr. Gruber, I want to know, how is your quarantine going and how is your family?
Everybody's good. We're just hunkering down and staying, social distancing and trying to isolate and connect virtually like we are right now. In a way, it's my brothers and sisters are all on the East Coast of the United States, Philadelphia and Princeton, New Jersey, and my mom is in Sarasota, Florida. So we actually are more in touch now because of FaceTiming and virtual connections. So it's been kind of nice because we're actually connecting more, but it's challenging. It's definitely challenging.
Yeah,
but we're all good.
Yeah, thank God. Mr. Gruber, I know that you are involved in a production of Music Man. How is the show going with all of this happening?
Well, we are on furlough and the theater is, shut down, but all the costumes and the set, they're all waiting for us to come back. The Broadway, we were supposed to close the show at the 1st of September because of the Broadway revival with Hugh Jackman and Sutton Foster, but that has been pushed back. So they're allowing us to continue to run the show as of now through the end of the year. So if we can come back safely, we have the fall to do that. And then if it's pushed back even further, we'll just have to see what the situation is, whether Broadway's reopening and when it's going to reopen. And maybe they'll even let us do it a little bit longer over the winter, if that's the case. But we had our first week. We opened on a Friday, and the following Thursday, we were shut down.
Oh my God. It's a little bit difficult. Oh my God. But
it is difficult, yeah.
Yeah, but it's life. Everything will come back soon. Mr. Gruber, I really want to know, when did you realize you wanted to be in the performing arts universe? As a child or just growing up with your family? How was that?
Well, when I was a kid, I was actually a springboard and platform diver. And that was my first interest. And I was a 2-time national age group champion. And I went to the World Age Group Diving Championships in Stuttgart, Germany when I was 13. And I got a silver medal on platform and 3-meter. And then I was an NCAA All-American at the University of Michigan, where I trained with one of the Olympic coaches. So that was sort of my childhood ambition. It wasn't really until high school that the two worlds started to come together. And I was still diving, but I was started to get interested in theater and music. I was always a choir kid, I have to say. I started in choir and music when I was in, not elementary, middle school and junior high school, which for us is like 7th and 8th grade. And then in high school, I was very much involved in it. And then I got involved in the drama club and doing musicals through the music department. So I was like thespian president and I was drama club historian and all that kind of stuff. And then I got to be my senior year and I went to Michigan on a scholarship, a diving scholarship. But I transferred once I got to Michigan into their School of Music. And I was a vocal performance major. And then when the '84 Olympic trials happened and I didn't qualify, I didn't want to train for another 4 years because I really wanted to focus on my music and theater. So I transferred to the College Conservatory of Music in Cincinnati, which is where I'm from. I grew up in Cincinnati. And I finished my junior and senior there as a musical theater major, a BFA in musical theater. So that was it. And then, so I got the bug in high school, I suppose, but I was always music. Music was always a big part of my family life. My father was always listening to classical music. We always had a very sort of good exposure to that early on. So I think that also kind of planted the seed for my love of music, especially.
Awesome. I saw in that promo video that you sent to us a poster of Letuque. I think is that because you were used to practice diving?
Yeah, and I saw that it was a reproduction of those sort of Art Deco posters of the 1920s, 1930s.
Yeah.
I think the artist's name is Razma, R-A-Z-M-A, and I just loved it, and so I bought it when I was in my 20s as sort of a remembrance of that part of my life. So yeah, and now it's hangs on my wall.
Awesome. So, what other type of art do you appreciate besides performing arts?
Oh, so much. I have a lot of varied interests. I mean, I love architecture, especially mid-century modern is a big passion.
Awesome.
I love so much of the visual arts too. And there's not really a genre particularly that attracts me more than others. It's all so rich and inspiring. I'm also a knitter, is a hobby of mine. And
awesome.
So as far as that kind of craft, it was great when I was on the road, especially touring. It gave me something to do as a sort of, and that's how I sort of learned the craft, was just being on the road with people who knit, and they sort of taught me. And then I just have a great passion for it. So I knit a lot too. But
awesome.
and then I love gardening, which isn't really, I guess, an art form, but I'm a big gardener too.
Yeah, so, I saw on your Facebook, I think, a little bit.
Lots of gardening. Yeah, lots of gardening pictures. It's like one of the few things I really post sort of unabashedly, my gardens, because I love them very much. Bring me great.
Awesome. So, Mr. Gruber, you did 9 Broadway shows, like Miss Saigon, Cats, A Chorus Line, and made a ton of regional shows too, and tours. So what do you think that is your success formula?
Well, a lot of it is luck, being in the right place at the right time. I have a short little story that I love to tell about how I broke into my first Broadway show. And the lesson to your students is this: work is, no matter what the work is, it's great to do it, because you never know who you're going to meet and what connection it's going to lead to, because the path into this business, as you know, is very mysterious, and it's not as straight ahead as maybe going into business, because you don't get a job, get promoted, it doesn't work that way. It's kind of roundabout. So anyway, I did a summer stock in a circus tent in the parking lot of a resort, a golf resort in Morgantown, West Virginia, which is out in the middle of nowhere, small town, small town. And we did this summer season, and one of the shows was A Chorus Line. And I played Mike, which is who I played in the original Broadway company, and then I did the revival also, but I played Mike. And the woman who they brought in to play Cassie was one of the associate dance captains on the Broadway company. So because of meeting her in that situation, and you would never think that such a small theater would bring in someone who is so well connected into the Broadway community. But she told me, she said, you're really right for this, because I was a tumbler too, because of my diving, I was a tumbler. And that was a big plus that kind of set me a bit aside, or gave me just a little edge.
It's a plus in your resume, right?
Yeah, well, and that's how I got Chorus Line, because Mike needed to tumble at that point, and they were always looking for tumblers. And I was the right age and had the right skill set. So she said, drop your picture and resume off at the stage door of the Schubert Theater in New York when you get back. And if there's an opening for mics, which we need a lot of because they tend to get injured because of the physical demands, we go through them quicker. So she said, we'll call you and bring you in. And that's exactly what they did. And I went off to Anchorage, Alaska for Alaska Light Opera to do a production of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And they actually contacted me there and said, the stage management said, can you come back and audition? We're having this audition. And I came back right before Christmas, and like 3 days later, my life changed, and I got my first Broadway show. And that just shows that that was luck. Oh, sorry.
No problem.
Let me get rid of that. That just shows that part of it's luck, being in the right place at the right time, and then having the skill set to book the job. So that was great. And then I met Bob Avian through that, and that's how I got Miss Saigon. So because they needed tumblers again for the Dragon Acrobat section. So I was one of those original 3 Dragon Acrobats. And that's how I got into Miss Saigon. So it is interesting the way it kind of, it's part luck and part skill. I think maybe even 50-50, you know.
Yeah, so do you think that it's important to students to achieve some different skills other than just dancing or acting or singing, but other kinds of skills?
Well, as my belief is, the more you can do, the more marketable you are. And you never know what specifically they might be looking for. Especially now, I think playing an instrument is really another good skill to have, because there is this trend of the actors also playing instruments, which they did with that company revival. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the wonderful director's name, the English director who started that trend, who did that company on Broadway and where the actors play the instruments. I think there was also a Sweeney Todd that Patti LuPone did, that revival where they played instruments, Michael Severus. So anyway, it's that's a good thing too. Like to be able to play guitar or play piano or play some sort of instrument, I think is good. Because you just never know.
Awesome. Mr. Gruber, you did the first national tour of A Chorus Line, right?
Yes, of the revival, yeah.
Yes, as Zach.
Yes.
How was that experience?
Well, it was great because I'm actually the only person who's done both the original Broadway show and then the revival. Because my age, I just happened to be in the right age, because I was only 24 when I did the original show that closed in '89, and then I was 45 when I did the revival. And I went in as Gregory Gardner in the revival, and then I understudied Michael Perez as Zach. And then when the national tour came up, they let me do Zach on the national tour. They asked me. It was great because I have such a history with the show, and I never knew Michael Bennett. He had passed away before I got into the Broadway company, but I did have a good relationship with Bjork, and and she really is the carrier. I mean, she's that. It's not even 1 degree of separation, because she was there with Tommy Walsh, with Bob Avian, with all the people that were that early influence about collaborating with making the show what it is. So she really understands what it is. So to work with her and get that all that information was fantastic. And I have such an affection for the show. I think it's one of the most magnificent pieces of theater ever. And because of its being stripped down to only the most elemental needs, I think it's timeless too because of that. And so it was great, and it's a big challenge. I mean, Zach is hard because he's there to keep to really shine the spotlight on the people on the line. They're the important people, but you've got to stay focused because you're sitting out in the audience, and it's so easy sometimes to kind of drift out of your paying attention after you've done it 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 times. So it was a great challenge. I loved it.
Awesome. I saw on Facebook too, oh my God, again, a video with a chorus line former actors dancing. Oh my God, and I saw you. It was awesome.
In my driveway, in my sweats. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a great thing that Jeffrey Schechter and Heather Purcell's put together. It was really lovely. They've done one too, I think, of they're doing one of Cats too. I'm
Awesome.
not involved in it, but they are doing one, and it's global, which is really cool.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So I have a friend in London who I've worked with who lives in London, and she did Cats in the West End, and I think she still had a unitard and a wig too. I don't know where she got the unitard and the wig.
Oh my God.
The wig, the unitard, the makeup, and in her living room, she was doing part of the ball. They did part of the Jellicoe ball. So I'm really excited to see it all put together. I think it's gonna be
awesome.
great.
Mr. Gruber, do you have something from Cats, from the productions, or something like a costume, or I don't know?
I used to have my one of my unitards, one of my costumes. I don't know if I had a tail. I never had a wig, but I did keep that. I don't have any shoes or anything because they wore out. So
yeah,
I'm trying to think. I don't really have any. I mean, I do have some. You know, when we broke the record of Chorus Line, that's the other fun thing because I was in the final company of Chorus Line, and then I was in Cats the evening it became the longest running show when it.
Cats were your second show on Broadway?
No, Cats was my fifth show, fourth show. But when Chorus Line closed, it took a while for Cats to catch up to it as far as overcoming the amount of performances. And they gave us a little souvenir paperweight for that. So I have that, which is kind of a nice memento. But I don't have, I have the movie, which is a great memento. It's the best memento of all. Yes.
Oh my God.
That's pretty cool to be part of history and to kind of be, because we don't have too much of that. Because, theater, you do it and it's over. And there might be some archival footage of it, but you don't really get that permanency that you do when you do a movie. So it was a great honor,
Yeah. Mr. Gruber, I'm a big fan of Cats, of course. But what really got me was the performances of each actor, because you were phenomenal. Oh my God. And especially your work. I remember thinking, how is it possible to turn that so credible to the audience? It's amazing. So what was the most difficult part of doing Cats?
Well, let me start with what was easy about it.
Yeah.
What was easy was that I had done the show for a year and a half before we filmed it, 8 shows a week. And that Gillian Lynn was very available, very much part of talking about it, so that we were put into the show with a connection with her information about the show. And so to get a year and a half of being able to explore it in front of a live audience and to understand it and to work on the physicality and so that when we went to filming it, I didn't have to process any new information necessarily. I didn't have to learn new steps. I didn't have to get stuff in my body. It was all in there. So there's something very freeing about that, because then you can put your attention completely on intention. And I found that to be maybe one of the reasons why I enjoyed it so much, was because I wasn't in my head thinking about, well, where's my arm, or where am I supposed to be? I could be present. And maybe that's a bit of what makes it interesting, because I think a lot of what's going on in my eyes is there because I can relax and I can be present. And I wasn't thinking about, oh, do I need to kick here, or what's the choreography, or what's the music, what notes, how am I to sing this? Because I kind of figured all that out from doing it for a year and a half beforehand. And that's a luxury, because most of the time you don't have that kind of strong basis before you go into something like that. And I think everybody was in the same boat, because everybody had done the show before, different companies all over the world, but they've all done the show. So when we got together, we didn't have to worry about learning the steps. We just got to become a company, which was really fantastic.
Awesome. Awesome. Mr. Gruber, we have some videos from students talking to you and asking some questions, little questions. So we want to show you. Let's go.
Hi, Michael. I'm Anna. First things first, I would like to thank you for being here talking to us. It means the world to us. And I would like to thank you for being such an inspiration, especially for me. I basically grew up watching the Cats DVD. I know all the lines memorized by heart. I know all the choreography, although I probably don't do it right, but it definitely has had a huge impact in my life and in my decision of becoming an artist, pursuing a career in musical theater. So I would like to ask you, of course, Munkustrap is a huge character in your life, in your career, but I would like to know which other character did you most enjoy playing and which one was the most challenging for you? Thank you and bye.
Well, that's a great question. I think early on, I did a lot of Don Lockwood's and Singing in the Rain, which was the Gene Kelly. And I found that to be, I mean, it's probably one of the most difficult shows to do, endurance-wise. I think you have 8 production numbers in the first act alone, and then you have an 11-minute or 12-minute ballet in the second act. So, and just the fact of doing that number in the rain, the end of Act 1, and you're just drenched by the end of it, and then you spend your intermission drying off and getting ready to go back into the second act. It's Herculean a bit, and I feel like I learned a lot about the demands of it are so high that you can't help but rise up to the occasion to do it. And it's a real triple threat type of performance where you really have to sing, you really have to dance, and you really have to act. And so yeah. I found that to be something that was sort of another really, and it's a role I did a lot. I did about 6 productions.
Oh my God.
Yeah, in different regional theaters and in different places. And then, in my 20s, that was sort of in my 30s, I did a lot of Singing in the Rains. In my 20s, I did a lot of West Side Stories, which was another big show for me. I played Riff, I think 4 times, and Tony 3 times. So there was a lot of, that was another great show that I feel like the discipline of that and the demands of that was very helpful in forming who I am. I'm also quite an athletic dancer, so those shows suit my skill. I idolized Gene Kelly growing up, so I think a lot of the way that he informed a lot of the way that I moved. So doing Singing in the Rain was a great gift because I got to even emulate him, watch him and emulate. And I think that's how we learn. We watch the people that are interesting to us. We see art that's interesting to us, and then we absorb it, and then through our own filter, we do our interpretation of it. So it is not a copy. It can never be an exact copy. But I think to imitate is a great way of learning your art form and it also defines your artistic taste. So those are the 2, I think, crucial shows for me growing up, besides Cats, which was important too.
Awesome.
That's a great question. Thank you.
Mr. Gruber, she knows all the lines of Munkustrap from Cats, all the lines. I asked her to do for you, but she was so nervous and she didn't. But she is amazing.
Hello, Michael. Nice to meet you. My name is Bia. I'm an actress here in Brazil, and I'm so happy to be able to talk to you. First of all, thank you for being such an inspiration for all of us. And second, it would be very nice if you could talk to us about how was it for you as an actor, the experience with Cat's makeup and costumes. What was most challenging about it? Was it difficult to move in the cat costume? Did you used to do your makeup every day? Who taught you how to do it? Anyway, you can talk about whatever you want. Tell us the story behind it, okay? Thank you, bye.
She is a makeup artist.
Oh, she is?
Yeah.
Well, that's a great question too. When I was on doing the film, I had somebody do my makeup every day, which was great. And it's funny because I had done the show for about, as I said, about a year and a half before we did the film. And we have to do our own makeup. And I found it to be an incredibly relaxing kind of part of my preparation. And I would take about 45 minutes to do it because I think Munkustrap, the thing about him, he has very clean, strong lines. I think it was the Mungo Jerry who'd done the show for a while. This is on Broadway, the American actor. He could do his makeup in like 10 minutes because Mungo Jerry is it's a little bit more patchy. And I would be so jealous because I'd be in there, 45 minutes doing my makeup, but I really enjoyed it. But after the film, my makeup, I went back to the Broadway company for 6 months, I think, afterwards. And I actually would emulate then the film makeup, which I thought, I mean, it was so beautiful. And it was just the way Karen did that makeup was fantastic. So, but I love doing the makeup and being a bit of an artist, like a visual artist too, you know,
Yeah.
with drawing, and it was always fun for me. The costume situation is interesting because I remember when we were put in, so the Broadway show was running because I came in as a replacement. It had run for many, many, many years. I think I went in 96 initially. And so when you have your put-in rehearsal, which is the day before you go in that night for your first public performance, the whole company comes in and you run the parts of the show that you're in for spacing, safety,
Yeah.
and just to get used to being on the stage with everyone around you. You rehearse by yourself, so you don't rehearse with the full company, just with the dance captain. And then you go in with the full company. But on that day, you are in your full your unitard and your wig, no makeup, which already looks kind of ridiculous.
Yes.
And everybody else is in warm-up clothes. And I just remember being horrified by being in that unitard, because you really do, until you get used to it, it is almost like being naked, because it's very, it's just a unitard. I mean, you got a little fur here and a little fur there, and you got the warmers and stuff, but
it's so tight.
It's very tight, and it feels, until you get used to it, and it's fantastic because you have such a freedom of movement. But then subsequently, other actors would come into the company, and I was on the other side of it, where I was in
awesome.
And we would always there'd always be that moment of like, it's okay, I know you feel ridiculous, but it's okay. Come into the cat world. And so that was fun. But I love that unitard was great to perform in, because they're so tight, but they really pull you up and give you that kind of sense of I don't know, slinkiness or cat-like quality. I think the costumes are brilliant. And just that ability to be artistic with it. It's not specific. We're not trying to be cats. We're an artistic representation of cats. And I think that's why the stage production is so magical, because it's not trying to be too literal, but it's more an expression of what it is.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. I remember as a child, I was 4 when the film of Cats were released. And I remember when I was 4, in all the newspapers and media here in Brazil, talking about Cats and the amazing performances, and that was so powerful in my life, and touched me as a child and now as an artist too. So thank you so much for everything. You are a part of that. Mr. Gruber, we have one more question from a student, so let's go.
Hi, Mr. Gruber. My name is Mario Botelho. I'm a student at the BIZ. And first, I want to congratulate you for all the amazing career that you have in Saigon and Caroline, but mainly Cats, because it's one of my favorite musicals from all time, and I'm really obsessed about it. And I think when people think in Cats, the first image that comes into your mind is your face. So really thank you for that. And I think you did such a remarkable performance there at Munkustrap. And you inspired an entire generation, and you could inspire a lot of others. And not only the cast members, but people like me who love musical theater and wants to enter in this market, and performances like yours gives us energy and makes us love more this incredible job that it's to being an actor. So really thank you for that. And next, I would like to ask a little question that concerns about all the time you spend in work on the market, 30 years if I'm not wrong. I'd like to know what are the biggest changes that you've seen all this time working on musical theater since you started until now. I would love to know. So I think that, and thank you, and bye-bye.
Oh my God.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Really great question. I think when I first started, there was much less saturation of talent. When I started in the late 80s into the 90s, if you could sing, dance, and act, you would work, especially if you were a man. there was just not, it wasn't as competitive. There wasn't as many incredibly talented kids. I think also when I was younger in the education process, there were like 4 or 5, 6 really great art schools in the country for theater. You had NYU, you of course had Juilliard, you had Carnegie Mellon, you had CCM in Cincinnati. Michigan was starting, but it wasn't what the program is now. These schools have built these programs up, and they are graduating 20, 30, 40 per school, incredibly gifted artists into this pool. So now there's probably 40 art schools across the country that are educating and training kids, young artists, exceptionally well. So I just wouldn't want to start now because, I mean, not to say that I don't want to discourage anyone, but I'm just saying personally, it was, I think, a little bit easier for me to get my leg in or my foot in, because there was just less competition. And those of us who were part of that Broadway community, it was a little bit smaller, it was, so that I think is that's been a game changer, because it's very hard to kind of break in now into the pack. And then there's more kids every year. So every year that you might get that Broadway show, then there's another 70 kids coming to New York that are all talented the next year that are then looking for a spot too. So I just think that the amount of talent now is extraordinary. And you have things like So You Think You Can Dance. I mean, my God, or The Voice. I mean, you have these reality shows, competition shows where you just go, how are these people? They're all superhuman, and there are so many of them. There's so many. So I think it's really about being unique to yourself and really figuring out who you are and what is your voice, and being true to that, and not trying to homogenize or buff down the edges and try to be like everyone else. You have to actually, I think, lean into being true and uniquely who you are. So I think those are the performers that are really breaking through. And that's what's great too, because what we have now also is wonderful diversity and the embracing of diversity in the arts, where there is no, Lori in Oklahoma doesn't have to be a white girl, an 18-year-old white girl anymore. She can be anything, because it's not colorblind anymore. It's race sensitivity in casting is much more embraced. So I think that's great, because there are no limitations anymore. However, if you think you're a certain type, you may not be the type anymore, because they're looking to mix it up a little bit and tell a story in a different way. So it's all you can do is just channel your passion into being who you are, and get out there and do it, and find places to perform and get in front of people and work with other artists, and collaborate. And I think that's how we grow, and that's how we become better artists. And but that's where I feel the difference is. I think it's the business has shifted because there's so many wonderful people, and there's so many more opportunities for inventive casting that you just have to put yourself out there, and hopefully you'll book it.
Awesome. Mr. Gruber, to finish, we have a message from a student. It's not a question, it's just a message. She was the responsible to introduce me in Cats. Her name is Cindy. She's talking in Portuguese, but I'm going to translate to you in English, okay?
Oi, Michael. Muito obrigada pelo seu carinho, dedicação, trabalho e esforço pelas artes. Você inspirou vários artistas e despertou tantos outros. Muito obrigada por tudo. Quem me apresentou Cats foi meu irmão na minha infância, e eu posso provar aqui. E, lógico, o meu personagem favorito é o Munkustrap e Hutton Tiger.
She said, hi, Michael. Thank you very much for your affection, dedication, work, and effort for art. You have inspired several artists and awakened so many others. Who introduced me to cats was my brother in my childhood, and I can prove it. So she showed the DVD. My favorite character is Munkustrap and Rotom Tiger. Thanks for all.
That's great.
Awesome. Mr. Gruber, to finish, I really want to know, what are you doing right now? Are you still performing or teaching? Both? What are you doing?
Well, I do teach. I have a vocal studio, so I've been teaching virtually online.
I have to take some classes with you. Oh my God.
And well, that's what's so great too, is that there's no distance doesn't matter anymore, you know? So I've been enjoying that a lot. And I'm actually, I think I'm becoming a better, and I'm also studying at the same time. So that's always great to teach and learn. And that is so reciprocal, as you know, as being an educator.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that. And I'm also a composer. So I've been writing because I can do that right now. I'm setting a series of Ogden Nash poems right now into a cycle. So that keeps me busy. And what else am I doing? Doing some things like this. Some of those videos. I did a video for a song that a friend of mine produced, and they did a Zoom. They did one of those big virtual kind of versions of it that they dropped on YouTube called Resilient, where I just sing a little bit of backup on. So there's stuff to do. I got a tap board. A friend of mine delivered a tap board, so I can practice my tap dancing, which is great. Awesome. We don't really have a good floor space, so I could put it on the driveway, tap away. I've been doing a lot of reading, so I'm just using this as a time to recharge, inspire, and enjoy the summer too. We had a beautiful spring, and now going into summer. And normally we're working 8 shows a week, and we don't get a chance to really enjoy the evenings and stuff. So I'm just trying to lean into this situation and find the positive side of it and find some joy around it. And I know we'll be back soon. And that's it. Just trying to keep my spirits up while we're in lockdown. Yeah.
So, Mr. Gruber, do you have any advice for students who wants to be in performing arts universe? Because we know that performing arts, it's not just Broadway. As an artist, you can't think that it's just Broadway. It's bigger than that. So, do you have any advice?
Well, just know that it's the work that is ultimately satisfying. It's in the doing that we get that spark. It's not where you're doing the work, it's the work. And I think that that's a big kind of revelation that I've learned, that some of my greatest experiences have been in very unexpected venues, small theaters, sometimes in the middle of nowhere, in educational settings. It doesn't always have to be in a big house with lots of costumes and small budgets, because the work doesn't need all of that. That's all icing. That's all the stuff around it. But what really satisfies us as artists is the doing of the work and the connection with our fellow actors and telling the story. So no matter where it may be, where it takes you, if you have an opportunity to tell a story and to communicate to an audience and to change some lives, it's worth it. And I think that's what we find exciting and what drives us to go forward. So don't be too concerned about where you're doing something. It's quality. It's the quality of what you're working and what you're learning about the craft as you work. And so I don't think, sometimes our egos get wrapped up in that, and you don't need to, because it's not really what's going to be ultimately what excites you,
Yeah. Mr. Gruber, thank you so much. I can't believe that this just happened. Oh my God. Thank you so much. Gente, muito obrigada por terem assistido no nosso canal no YouTube. E próxima semana a gente vai ter mais entrevistas, tá bom? Então segue lá o Michael Gruber nas redes sociais, os vídeos no YouTube. E é isso aí. Tchau, tchau.